Hi, Sarah back again. This is part 2 of setting up the rigid Heddle loom. So, you followed along in the first part and we talked about putting all the threads out. Now I've gotten to the end. I'm just going to cut this thread and tie it off. So once again I have 50 slots going through here. And there's a double string in each of the slots. So there's actually a total of 100 strings. They actually make devices that you can measure this out ahead of time if you wanted to. That does seem to be a bit easier when you get into the more complicated looms. And you can also buy the warping threads pre-cut. So you don't even have to you don't have to measure them out. You just tie them on the end here and pull each one through. So that's also a time saver. So we're on to the second part of this, and what I'm going to do is I just grabbed a piece of string or yarn or whatever, and you're going to tie this end off. Doesn't matter where, that's fine right there. You're going to take this off eventually anyways. And get a pair of scissors. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut these threads. So I just took it off my peg and I cut my strands. Now this is the trickiest part. Now you're going to wind this onto the back spool. And this is when you really need to put some tension on it. This is also the point where it's really helpful to have a second person. So we might cut this video short a little bit and have my videotaper help me with this, but I'll at least get it started. So what I've done here is I've provided some tension, and I'm just going to start to turn it. You can see I've lost one of the threads there, so we need to regroup and keep my tension on. Because what you want is you just want all the strands to have equal tension. Don't worry if it feels like it's knotting back here at your one hand. It'll all work its way out. And the other trick you can do is to actually put some cardboard dividers in here to kind of keep it a little bit smooth. I don't know that that's really critical. I did do that initially, but I've not done it for a while, and it seems to do okay without them. But what you would do is just put a piece of cardboard in here, and it kind of keeps these from getting tangled up a little bit. So they are provided in the rigid Heddle loom. Like I said, if you have a partner to help you, it is helpful. It's very important that you keep this part under the same amount of tension. Otherwise, when you go to weave, your warp lines are going to just pull out. It's just not going to turn out well at all. So. And I'm going to show you a trick when we get down to the end on how you can save a little bit of this warp line, because you're going to find that there's a fair amount of waste of the warp line because you can't use several inches of it back in here and what's getting tied up here. So there's a couple tricks that you can do to actually save some of that warp line and keep a really nice even tension. And one of the tricks, that's probably my favorite part, is just how when you get to the end, little thing that you can do to really keep the tension tight. You can see I have one thread here that's just not quite tight enough. I'm going to pull it back. You can see it's pretty even tension across here. And again, we're going to add some more tension when we get to the very end. Getting close to the end. You can understand in those competitions where they have like a sheep de shawl or alpaca de shawl competition, why they let you warp the loom ahead of time, because this part is very time consuming. And even though there are a few shortcuts, it's still going to take time. You would think with all these strands that you would end up with a lot of knots, but if you do it right, you're not going to. You can see it's a little twisted, but I don't bother to get that out. Just keep my tension on, because the slots actually kind of take out any problems. It just slides along. If somebody else is here helping you, they get to use two hands. It makes it a little easier. We are almost the whole way up. So again, we're going to be making 4 placemats on this. 12 feet of warping line is what I'm putting on. We're going to go across 50 slots, which will give you a total of 100 strands coming through. You can measure off 50 feet of your yarn, whatever kind of yarn you want. I'm using rug yarn, alpaca rug yarn. And there's going to be about 50 rows. Might be a few more or a few less, depending on how thick your rug yarn is. The rigid Heddles come in a lot of different sizes. This one's made by Ashcroft. And I like it. It's portable. You can actually sit down and use it, although I find that a little hard to do, but just find it easiest at a table. All but done. So now our next step is going to be, since we have 2 strands through every slot, we're going to actually start pulling them through the eye. So the next thing I'm going to do is take off our string here. You're going to get your hook again. And now what we're going to do, you see there's 2 strings in this eye. So, going to the right of it, I'm going to go through the eye this time and pull it through. So now I have 1 in the slot and 1 in the eye. And again, there's 2 strings there, so pull the 1 through. next one has 2 strings. So I'm going to go to the eye right beside it. Grab a hold of one of the threads, the other thread stays in the slot. Grab a hold of one of the threads, come back through. Come through, pick up one of the threads and go back. Another time-consuming part of the warping. Doesn't help that sometimes I feel like I'm working with all thumbs. Pull that over. And you have your short strings now, so they really don't knot up. So one's going to be on top, one's going to be below, and that's how you're going to end up with your top and bottom when you go to weave. So it's probably becoming a little clearer at this point how we're going to do this. And I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and finish this off. We're going to end up doing a part 3. I'm going to show you how to tie it onto the other board. And then we'll be finished setting up the warp.